piece. It was accepted, and then I found out via Facebook, as we are all want to do, that the journal or quarterly or whatever you want to call it folded. So it is back out into the world like a free bird. As Jesse said, I make cocktails and booze, and I play with booze on a daily basis. This story is somewhat about that, as are like 95% of the things I write. So hope you have a glass of wine. That makes everything I say better. This story itself is called God in Neon. Ford could feel it coming on like a wave, like the darkness that followed the sun over the mountains. It erupted somewhere back behind his throat in a space not quite in him, but not quite apart from him either. It had been a part of him for the better part of a year now, and it come mostly in ebbs and flows. This feeling of longing had been there for much longer than he cared to remember, but it was only in the past year had he come to really know its presence. Before that, it had almost always just been, much in the way that the hair on his chest and back had almost always been. He didn't welcome the feeling exactly, but like an unresponsive dog, he knew he needed to deal with it. His father sat in a wheelchair by the fire. He had a book in his hands, but seemed to be asleep. The scraps of white hair that were left hanging limp off the end of his skull. "Pa," Ford said. "Pa, I'm going out." The man didn't stir. He didn't stir much on a good day, but as long as his head was up, you could still see the fire there. The energy he no longer expended on moving muscle, it seemed. The energy he no longer expended on moving muscle had, it seemed, become concentrated in the man's eyes. Decades of memory sat there with no way out. You could see he understood you, but most communication ended there. On the good days, on the days where his father managed to roll himself from window to fireplace, he sometimes got a grunt as well. Ford licked his lips. The feeling crept across his tongue. He imagined father in Vietnam crawling across God knows what. What all had he seen? He never told Ford, even when he could speak. Mud caking in the sun, arm over arm over arm, abdominal muscles tight to protect against any and everything in the name of God and country. God and country. These days Ford's God came with an ABV. The older man raised his head when Ford gripped the wheelchair's handles. He turned his head and focused one eye on his son. "I'm going out, Pa. I'll be back in a bit." Ford said it without looking down at his father. If he looked the man eye to eye, his father would know. His father would know the feeling had come over him again. It was only a matter of time. His father had been the one who would bail him out when he woke up on one of the soggy mattresses downtown. He'd done it more than a father should, Ford knew, but he continued to do it. Even after that longer stretch in county, his father had been there. And then, one morning, he wasn't. Ford could still taste the cigars on the back of his teeth when he asked Denton, the one in charge of the overnight shift, where his pa was. Denton, sized short and squat like a dishwasher, bit his lip. Had a stroke last night. Ford swallowed a little bit of spit he'd accumulated. Denton nodded. Started to drive himself down the mountain. Some developer found his car on the side of the road and called it in. Since then, almost a year ago, Ford had tried to keep it under control. It was hard, though, when you had to work more hours and take care of a person who couldn't talk, could only stare. Ford rolled his father over to the window. He flicked a switch and the porch light kicked on, illuminating a half circle that reached a few feet onto the yard. Beyond that, there were stars. Since Vietnam, his father didn't like not knowing, and Ford listened to that. Put his father there just in case. If something were to happen, his father would see it. Wouldn't come up on him like the stroke. Nothing would take him by surprise ever again. The old man rolled his eyes to watch Ford. Ford caught the stare and held it. His father knew. "You know I need to," Ford said. He moved over to a set of drawers and pulled out a mess of bungee cords. "You always brought me to church as a kid, Pa. Told me I needed to have faith in something." Ford unhooked 4 cords from the bunch and put the rest back. He ran his teeth over the sides of his tongue. He felt like it was like fluffing a pillow, getting the taste buds ready for what was about to happen. "You showed me, too, that the Lord God wasn't going to help me. If he was, why would I need this? Why wouldn't you still be talking?" His father stared out into the night. This was how it went. This was Ford's judgment. His father had tried when he was able to stop, slipping Ipecac into his 40s and watching as he threw up in the yard. Their hound dog Russ would inevitably hover, lapping it up. Now it was silence. Ford crouched by one of his father's wheels and slipped the cord through. He drilled eye hooks into the wall around the window and slipped the end of one cord into an eye hook. He pulled it up to the other hook near the windowsill. He could practically taste the bourbon now. He already knew his first drink. He knew it'd be a double. He knew he'd be sleeping in his truck that night. The old man looked on like he was waiting for something. Ford could guess what that would be. A better son, maybe, or a voice. Both, probably. It wasn't all Ford's fault that he didn't really understand. His father didn't know the pull, the force that brought him to the bar. It was something holy, something that filled Ford with the light he'd heard all his neighbors talk about when they talked about church. They got their light from God, he got his from neon signs. They didn't seem to understand that, though. The only people who truly understood that were the ones he drank with, and his mother. His mother had worshipped at the same altar for years. They found her upside down in a ditch a decade back. She'd made her choices and he was making his. They understood each other. She'd understand now wherever she was. Ford was on the other side, hooking the other wheel to the wall. He did it slowly, tenderly almost. Ford might make it back before his father needed to be in bed. He could try at least. It wasn't like he did this often. One night in the chair wouldn't kill his father any more than he was already dead. Plus, who knew what the night would lead to? That was the thing. A couple of drinks and the world opened up in ways he couldn't predict. Ford then attached the other cords to the sides of the chair. With all four in place, Ford nudged his father's chair with a toe and didn't move. "I'm going to leave you some water here. You shouldn't need food for a bit, but I'll check on you later," Ford said. Both of them knew there was as good a chance as not that he'd follow through. Ford set a glass of water with a long straw on the tabletop attached to the wheelchair, put a blanket over his father's legs and adjusted it so that he would face the sunrise. Ford clenched and unclenched a hand at his side. He needed to hurry up and get down there. Those drinks wouldn't last forever. He bent down and kissed his father on the forehead. The old man's head smelled of Brill cream. Ford took a fingernail and scraped his lips. "I'll see you later, Pa," his father grunted. Ford imagined the many things that grunt could mean as he closed the door and made his pilgrimage to the bar. Thank you.